Humanity did not arrive among the stars with a roar. There were no war hymns, no fleets blotting out suns, no weapons primed at the edge of alien space. After centuries of conflict on their own world, humans had chosen a different path. When they finally broke the silence of the cosmos, they did so with open hands. And they sent one man, Ambassador Elias Vaughn. He was not a soldier, not a politician shaped by power games. He was something rarer, someone who believed, truly believed, that understanding was stronger than fear. His voice had ended border wars on Earth. His presence had calmed riots before the first stone was thrown. If anyone could carry humanity's message into the unknown, it was him. The alien coalition had responded to first contact with cold curiosity. They called themselves the Thrax Dominion, a civilization ancient, vast, and utterly convinced of its own superiority. Still, they allowed a meeting. On their terms. Elias stood alone inside the landing chamber of their capital world. The air shimmered faintly with an unfamiliar energy, humming against his skin. Towering figures surrounded him, tall, chitin-armored beings with eyes like polished obsidian. Their silence was not welcoming. It was judgment. A translator drone hovered near his shoulder, its soft glow the only familiar thing in the room. "State your purpose," one of them finally said, its voice layered and metallic, echoing from every direction at once. Elias took a slow breath. "My name is Elias Vaughn," he said steadily. "I come on behalf of Earth." The drone translated instantly, shaping his words into their harsh, clicking language. He continued, undeterred by their unblinking stares. "We have come a long way to find you, not as conquerors, not as rivals." He paused, letting the words settle. "We come in peace." There was a ripple among them, not emotion, not quite. Something colder. Amusement, perhaps. "Peace," another voice echoed, sharper this time. "A concept of the weak." Elias didn't flinch. "Peace," he replied, "is a choice. One we have fought very hard to earn." For a moment, there was silence. Not the tense kind, the kind that felt like a decision being made somewhere far above his understanding. Then the lead figure stepped forward. "You crossed into Dominion space without tribute," it said. "You speak without submission. You offer peace." A pause. "We will respond in kind." Elias allowed himself the smallest flicker of hope. Then the alien raised a limb. There was no warning. A pulse of energy tore through the chamber, white, blinding, absolute. Elias never had time to react. The transmission continued. Back on Earth, billions watched as the signal dissolved into static. The last image, burned into every screen, every memory, was of their ambassador standing tall, unarmed, and unafraid, right before the light consumed him. No speech followed. No explanation. Only silence. Across cities, across continents, across orbiting stations, humanity stopped. Not in panic. Not in chaos. In something far worse. Stillness. The stars had answered. And they had answered with execution. 6 full minutes after the transmission ended, Earth said nothing. No emergency broadcasts. No retaliatory alerts. No speeches from leaders scrambling to control the narrative. Across every continent and orbital station, humanity remained suspended in a silence so complete it felt unnatural, as if the entire species had inhaled at once and simply forgotten how to breathe. Then the footage replayed. Not on news channels. Not through official systems. Everywhere. Personal devices, public screens, ship displays, deep space relays. Every network carried the same final moment. Elias Vaughn standing alone, shoulders squared, eyes steady, and the blinding flash that followed. Again, and again, and again. By the 10th replay, grief had begun to change shape. It hardened. In a secured command facility buried beneath the Arctic ice, the silence broke. "Confirm signal origin," a voice ordered. "Thrax Dominion Capital System," came the reply. "Transmission verified. No interference. No ambiguity." Another pause, shorter this time. "Casualty." The room didn't need the answer, but protocol demanded it. "Ambassador Elias Vaughn is confirmed deceased." No one spoke after that. They didn't need to, because everyone in that room knew what came next. Thousands of kilometers away, in orbit above Mars, a single man watched the replay only once. Commander Cale Vaughn stood alone in the observation deck of a warship that officially did not exist. The stars stretched endlessly before him, cold and indifferent, but his focus remained fixed on the reflection in the glass, the frozen image of his brother's final moment. Elias looked calm. Of course he did. He always did. Cale's jaw tightened, but his expression never broke. Where Elias had been warmth, Cale was control. Where Elias believed in people, Cale understood them, especially at their worst. A soft chime broke the silence behind him. "Commander," an officer said carefully, "High Command is requesting." "Patch them through," Cale interrupted. The glass shifted, replacing the stars with a panel of waiting faces, leaders, admirals, analysts. Some looked furious. Others looked afraid. All of them looked to him, not because of rank, because of what he represented. "Commander Vaughn," one of them began, "we are preparing a diplomatic response." "No," Cale said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The word landed like a sealed verdict. Another figure leaned forward. "We must consider the broader implications." "They executed him," Cale replied, cutting through the room with surgical precision. "On open transmission. Without negotiation. Without warning." Silence answered him. Cale let it linger for exactly 3 seconds. Then he spoke again. This was not a misunderstanding. The panel shifted uneasily. This was a demonstration. Deep within classified archives, locked behind layers of authorization few even knew existed, a file was accessed. Not created. Not discovered. Activated. Project. Vaughn Protocol. 2 names appeared at the top. Elias Vaughn, ambassadorial designation. Cale Vaughn, Strategic Command Authority. Beneath them, a single line of text. In the event of diplomatic termination, escalation authority transfers immediately. Back on the observation deck, Cale finally moved. He turned away from the glass, from the last image of his brother, and faced the waiting officers. There was no anger in his eyes, no visible grief, only clarity. "Signal all fleets," he said. The officer hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Commander, are we declaring war?" Cale Vaughn shook his head. "No," he said calmly. Then, after a beat, "We're ending one." The room stilled. "Mobilize." The Thrax Dominion did not prepare for war. Why would they? From their perspective, the incident had already achieved its purpose. The alien envoy, fragile, soft, speaking in the language of cooperation, had been eliminated cleanly, publicly, and without resistance. It was a lesson, broadcast across the stars. This was not a galaxy that rewarded weakness. Their analysts logged the event as resolved. Their military remained at standard readiness. Their fleets, vast and ancient, continued their patrols with the same unshaken certainty that had defined their empire for millennia. Humanity, they assumed, would respond like all lesser civilizations did, with outrage, with noise, with time. They were wrong. It began at the edge of Dominion space. A listening outpost stationed in a sparse, unremarkable system detected the anomaly first. At 3:17 local cycle, long-range sensors registered a distortion, brief, sharp, and unlike anything in their database. Not a fleet signature, not a jump corridor. Something smaller. Unidentified object entering perimeter, the station overseer reported, its tone more irritated than concerned. Designation, came the reply. The overseer paused. Single vessel. There was a flicker of confusion across the command interface. A probe. No, the overseer said slowly. Configuration does not match known classifications. The object did not slow. It did not request entry. It did not acknowledge the dozens of automated warnings flooding every communication band. It simply arrived. The ship was unimpressive. Compared to the towering war constructs of the Dominion, it looked almost fragile. Its hull was smooth, dark, and unadorned. No visible weapon arrays, no external shielding emitters, no signs of the aggressive architecture the Thrax associated with power. It hovered at the edge of the system for exactly 12 seconds. Then it transmitted. The signal did not target the outpost. It targeted everything. Every relay, every ship, every command node across the Dominion's outer sectors lit up simultaneously. Frequencies were overridden. Encryption protocols bypassed as if they weren't there. And then a voice spoke. Calm. Measured. Human. You were offered peace. The translation systems struggled for only a fraction of a second before aligning. You chose demonstration. Across multiple systems, commanders froze, their attention pulled to the same unexpected broadcast. The voice continued. We have reviewed your response. No threats. No raised tone. Just certainty. This is ours. At 3:19, the outer defense world of Karen went dark. There was no explosion. No detectable energy surge. No fleet engagement. One moment the planet existed, ringed with orbital defenses, home to billions, a cornerstone of Dominion border security. The next moment, it didn't. Sensors reported absence. Not destruction. Not debris. Absence. As if the world had been removed from existence with surgical precision. Panic was not an emotion the Thrax Dominion experienced. Not in any recorded history. But confusion? That spread instantly. What weapon was used? No energy signature detected. Where is the attacking fleet? No additional contacts in system. Then what? The questions overlapped, collided, escalated, and through it all, the human signal remained, uninterrupted, unhurried. Consider this a correction. The voice paused, not for effect, but as if allowing the weight of what had just happened to settle. You demonstrated what you believed power to be. Another pause. We are demonstrating otherwise. For the first time since their empire had risen, the Thrax Dominion did not have an answer. Because this was not how war worked. There were supposed to be fleets. Strategies. Predictable escalations. Instead, there was only a single ship, and a message, and somewhere, far beyond their reach, a human commander who had already decided how this would end. The Thrax Dominion adapted quickly. They had to. Within a single rotation of their capital world, Every outer system was placed on maximum alert. Fleets were recalled. Defense grids were reinforced. Long-range sensors were recalibrated to search for the impossible, the unknown weapon, the unseen fleet, the anomaly that had erased Karen without a trace. They found nothing. And that was the first fracture. Cale Vaughn did not advance like a conqueror. He advanced like a mathematician. Every movement was calculated. Every action served a purpose beyond immediate destruction. He didn't need to overwhelm the Dominion. He needed to unmake their certainty. The second strike came without warning. A Dominion battle group, 27 capital ships strong, was repositioning near a major trade artery when its command structure collapsed. Not destroyed. Rewritten. Orders shifted mid-transmission. Targeting systems reclassified Allied vessels as hostile. Identification protocols failed, then inverted. For 12 minutes, the fleet tore itself apart. By the time manual overrides were attempted, it was already over. What remained drifted in silence, crippled, leaderless, and utterly confused. No external attacker was ever detected. Then came the supply failures. Entire logistics chains vanished from tracking systems. Convoys arrived at empty coordinates. Resource worlds reported deliveries that had never been sent. Starbases starved while warehouses elsewhere overflowed with misrouted materials. At first, Dominion Command assumed sabotage. Then incompetence. Then something far worse. Because every attempt to correct the errors only made them spread. Cale watched it all unfold from the bridge of his ship. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just quiet observation. Phase progression? An officer asked. On schedule, Cale replied. His eyes moved across streams of data. Fleet positions, communication intercepts, behavioral models updating in real time. They're reallocating forces to compensate, the officer noted. Of course they are, Cale said. And in doing so, they're exposing the next layer. He made a small adjustment on the display. A system far deeper within Dominion territory lit up. Prepare transmission. Across the Dominion, the human signal returned. Not as an interruption this time, but as an expectation. They had begun to wait for it, to fear it. This is mercy, the voice said, unchanged in tone, unchanged in pace. A pause. Compared to what comes next. The third strike was different. Not subtle. Not invisible. A core shipyard, one of the Dominion's oldest and most heavily defended installations, detected the human vessel entering its perimeter. This time, the defenses fired. Energy lances cut across space, enough firepower to shatter moons. The human ship did not evade. It didn't need to. The weapons bent, not deflected, not absorbed, redirected. They curved mid-flight, arcing away from their target as if space itself had rejected the attack. For the first time, Dominion commanders witnessed something they could not categorize, something that broke their understanding of control. Then the ship moved. Not forward, not through, but closer, instantly, as if distance had become irrelevant. Moments later, the shipyard went dark. Not destroyed, disabled. Every system, defense, production, life support, ceased functioning simultaneously. No damage, no debris, just silence. Across the Dominion, something began to spread. It wasn't panic. Not yet. It was recognition. The realization that this was not a war they understood. Because their enemy wasn't trying to defeat them. He was teaching them. system by system, failure by failure, message by message. On the bridge, Kale Vaughn finally spoke again. "Open channel," he said. The connection formed instantly. "This is not escalation," he transmitted. A pause. "This is restraint." And for the first time in their history, the Thrax Dominion began to feel something dangerously close to fear. Part 5. The final choice. The request came without ceremony. No grand declaration. No attempt at dominance. No hidden threat woven into carefully chosen words. Just a signal, broad, open, unmistakable. "We wish to communicate." It reached every human relay within seconds. For a moment, no one responded. Not out of hesitation, out of certainty. Because by now, the pattern was clear. This wasn't negotiation. This was the end. On the bridge of the lone human vessel, Kale Vaughn stood motionless as the request repeated. Around him, officers waited. Not tense, not uncertain, but watchful. Every system was stable. Every projection aligned. There were no surprises left in the Dominion's behavior. They had reached the final stage exactly when expected. "Put them through," Kale said. The Dominion Council chamber appeared. Vast, dimly lit, filled with the towering forms that had once seemed so immovable, so certain of their place in the galaxy. They did not look the same now. Their posture had changed. Not lowered, but measured. For the first time, they understood the scale of what stood against them. "Human Commander," one of them began, its layered voice lacking the sharpness it once carried. "We request cessation of hostilities." Kale regarded them in silence. Not as an equal. Not as a superior. As a variable that had finally reached its conclusion. "You executed an unarmed envoy," he said. "No anger. No accusation. Just fact." The chamber remained still. "We misjudged your intent," another voice added carefully. "Your species operates outside established." "You killed a man who came to save you," Kale interrupted. The words landed harder than any weapon he had used. A pause followed, longer than any before. Across the Dominion, systems remained crippled. Fleets were scattered. Infrastructure, intact but useless, stood as silent reminders of how completely their control had been taken from them. They were not defeated. They were held, balanced on the edge of something they could not predict. "We offer surrender," the first counselor said at last. "Full compliance. Reparations. Integration of your diplomatic." "No," Kale said. The interruption was immediate. Final. "We are not here to take from you." That, more than anything, unsettled them. "Then, what is your demand?" another asked. Kale's gaze did not shift. "You will remember him." Silence followed. Confusion this time, not strategic, not fearful. Genuine. Kale continued. "You will remember that he came without weapons, that he stood alone, that he offered you a future where this never needed to happen. He took a single step forward. And you will remember what followed." The Dominion Council did not respond immediately, because for the first time they understood. This was not a war for territory, not for resources, not even for dominance. It was a correction, a line drawn across the stars. "Terms will be transmitted," Kale said. "You will dismantle your expansion protocols. You will open your systems to monitored diplomacy. You will adopt the principles he died for." A pause. "You will become what he believed you could be. And if we refuse, one counselor asked, though the question already carried its own answer. Cale's expression did not change. "You won't." The transmission ended. In the cycles that followed, the Thrax Dominion did something no record had ever shown. They changed, not out of weakness, out of understanding. Their fleets were rebuilt, not as instruments of conquest, but as guardians of negotiated space. Their doctrines shifted. Their expansion halted. Their voice, once absolute, became measured, and at the center of their capital world, where the execution had taken place, they built something new. Not a weapon, not a monument to power, a memorial to a single human who had stood before them and offered peace. Far from their systems, Cale Varn stood once more before the stars. The mission was complete, the outcome inevitable, but for the first time since the transmission, he allowed himself to look at the reflection in the glass. Not the final moment. Something older. A memory. Elias. Smiling. Hopeful. Certain. Cale exhaled slowly. "You were right," he said quietly. Then he turned away, and the ship disappeared into the dark.